The people on this panel are all people that have really made a difference in my life as a parent and as a professional. I really mean that sincerely. It's not just something I say. Full disclosure, Marissa and I were like work colleagues, and actually, she was my son's behavior consultant and is still probably the behavioral person that I rely on the most for insight into my son's needs and what he's thinking. And Ryan, some of the things that you've shared with me have given me insight to my son's behaviors and thoughts and what he's struggling with in a way that nothing that I've gotten, out in the community from therapists and other people have. And, Amy, you as well, just the conversations that we have and the things that you guys have shared with me have really made a difference in my life and in my son's life. So I really do appreciate that. And I hope that everyone um, has that sense by the end of the session today. These questions are just meant to be a guide. So we can ask questions. Feel free to raise your hand or maybe put it in the chat so that we can have a flow. And don't feel like every single one of you on the panel need to answer every single one of these questions. I really want this to be very discussion based and not, kind of not too structured. But so some of these things you've said, but the first question is something that just kind of what are your biggest challenges as an adult? One thing I want to know too is what language do you prefer? You an adult on the spectrum, neurodivergent? Does it matter to you?
I prefer identity first, so autistic person. I'm not the biggest fan of on the spectrum, but I use it myself sometimes when I'm trying to bridge that gap and translate because like that's still kind of one of the dominant, like I'm flexible when I'm trying to advocate, but when it's just me talking, I'm autistic,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
No, it does to me. Yeah.
Yeah. But I want other people to adopt it, but I also can't police everybody else's language, and I have to accept that. And there's reasons to unpack, and that's like a whole separate panel discussion of like the language and the history behind the language and
Right.
all that stuff. So, yeah.
For
I think
me, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
No,
I I I say that I'm autistic. I used to be really, really like about the language, but
Mhm.
I try to steer away from rigidity when I can, and allow myself to be flexible because if I do that, then I'm going to be upset when people do things. And there are things that I don't like that people say, and I can't help but roll my eyes when they say them, but they're super uber popular in the autism community. But I feel like they are part of the thing that creates the barrier between um, uh, wha- um, whenever I mention it in actual advocacy, people are like, "What?" But like in like the media, USA Today wrote an article called "The Autism Wars," and they talked about it was about the battle between adult autistics and parents of children who have autism, and I think that it was hard to get away from that article. And I have had that experience a couple times, but I've really had more people open to hearing what my experience was. But the few times that happens, it really stands out to me when people like dismiss my autism because I communicate now. And so then it created this trauma dumping for me where I have to tell everyone that I actually was diagnosed with profound autism, if we're going to call it profound autism, but they didn't have it then. And I go on this big long rant and about how I had and do still have quite high support needs, but that doesn't have anything to do with my IQ or things like that. And it becomes a difficult thing. And when I added the language in there, I couldn't function because people like it in explaining themselves. For example, I will not call myself neurospicy because I am not spicy. I'm not an addition to your meal to make you feel nice. I am living in torture every day. It's why I do endurance racing. And a lot of people are like, oh, if there was a cure for autism, would you take it? And I honestly, I I go back and forth every day because I am suffering daily. And people forget that because as someone who's also chronically ill, I don't tell people. So I just suffer quietly and inflicted on my wife. And so when I was really hung up on language, it impacted all of that because I was policing everyone's language and it impacted my ability to make friends with other people and share this part of my story. So I stopped. But if I'm talking about me, I say autistic, but it might just be habit.
No, thank you.
Sorry, that was
Marissa,
a
what?
lot.
No, it's actually
No,
great.
this
Marissa,
is really good because I literally am wearing a neurospicy t-shirt and I want to explain why. So, I identify as autistic. I'm autistic. Um, so I do not look at autism as something that is, I believe that autism is the evolution of the human brain. I do not look at it as a disability itself. I think that there are other diagnoses, there are other challenges that come in combination with autism that make it more challenging. But that is why I'm fine saying neurospicy, right? Now, would I make a OCD spicy t-shirt? Absolutely not. I also have OCD. And my OCD is something, if they offered me a pill to get rid of it, I would sacrifice all my limbs and eyes, everything to get rid of my OCD. And so I guess it just goes to people's experiences being different. So, like, my autism has allowed me to be very successful in my field and help so many people. I'm able to translate, autism to the neurotypical world. But I also, uh, am very thankful for being autistic. I'm thankful that I don't have to courtesy talk about a Dungeons and Dragons tattoo, right? I'm thankful that I don't waste my time, beyond the sentence I force myself to say, like, how was your morning? And then I get to my email, right? Like, I don't have to, I don't even think about all these things. I don't get caught up in it. And I would hate to, like, I wouldn't want to be neurotypical. So being autistic is something that, like, I really, really, really embrace. And on the flip side of that, like, my autism presents in a way that allows me to blend and mask easily, right? Now, how I'm masking right now is not the same as when this is over and it's drained every ounce of energy from me. And I also, have my own physical chronic illness that, and, like, there's a lot of challenges that come with being autistic, right? Our bodies are different. A lot of us have other comorbid physical abnormalities, but being autistic
Raise
itself
hand thing.
is something that I think is not is something I'm proud of, even for my son who I who would be identified as having high support needs, right? So he is predominantly non-speaking. He uses an AAC device, and I've designed his whole world in a way that makes him happy. And my goal for him is to be happy and make progress in life, however that looks for him. And he is. And so it's challenging, but it just requires a different lens.